let's bring on Eric Engels right now because we admit it, Eric. I told you this on Saturday when the Rangers played the Canadiens. I sat next to you at the game and I was like, honestly, I don't think we've talked about the Montreal Canadiens once on our show since our Atlantic Division preview. So shame on us because last night's game was incredibly exciting and you were in the building for it. Laine scores that goal in his first game since December, right? It's been a long time since Laine's stepped on the ice and his first time doing it in the Montreal Canadiens jersey. I mean, how special was that game last night?
It was really special. By the way, you guys missed a perfect transition opportunity to tell Jeff somebody's got to come out for somebody to come in. And no, seriously, like last night was one of those nights where I'm often thankful to be working and doing what I do in Montreal. There's just something about this market where something happens like that, and it's unique to this market. I mean, it's not like if Patrik Laine had come back anywhere, it would have been quite a scene, but the Bell Center, it's on another level. And, as a writer, every once in a while, you get a story that falls in your lap and it goes exactly as you want it. It writes itself, as we say. Mm-hmm. It's very rare. It's the first time in 25 games it's happened with the Canadiens this year. And that was a layup. As soon as he put that fucking net the way he did, not just the fact that he scored, but the way he did it, that wrote itself. And it wouldn't have been as easy if the Canadiens didn't end up winning the game. That would have made for a trickier thing to write. It would have just been more about Laine instead of Laine and what it means for the Canadiens that he's back. But as Jeff always says, we don't cheer for teams, we cheer for players. And how the hell can you not cheer for Patrik Laine coming back 354 days after everything he's been through and ripping a shot like that? And he said he felt awful throughout the entire game. And I brought that to Josh Anderson. I said, he said he felt awful the whole game. He said, during intermission, he kept saying that. And I looked at him and said, I don't know, man, it looks like you're pretty dominant out there. So it's a pretty funny post-game interviews around the room, and a great night to be a Montreal Canadiens reporter, honestly.
Eric, I got to live, I don't know, like probably my coolest ever NHL broadcasting moment was there in Montreal. It was Marc-Andre Fleury's 500th win. And I got to be on the call for that. And we basically didn't speak the last 2 minutes of the game because we just went to sound. The entire building in Montreal is cheering for a goaltender from the other team and like serenading him. And I've played some games in that building wearing the enemy sweater, especially, in some preseason games, and they were packed games, which is incredible in preseason, but you do start to you start to see it. I mean, I've been a press box player for my times in real games and playoff games there, but what an unbelievable hockey atmosphere it is. And to have Patrik Laine come and join that team after we know he's battled all sorts of different things, and then he gets this opportunity to play for Marty St. Louis, a guy who seems to be a coach that every player wants to play for in the National Hockey League. He deals with the injury. It's an unfortunate, and the building did not disappoint, and the fans did not disappoint, and the city, they never do disappoint.
I totally agree with you. I mean, it's something that you don't take for granted working in this market at 17 years that I've been going to the Bell Center as a reporter, many more before that, obviously, as a fan of hockey. It's a special thing. And there's a reason that it's probably the team is probably most challenged to have a good home record than any other team in the NHL, because every team that comes here gets up to play at the Bell Center. Like it's a special thing for everybody around the league. Every time those player polls are put out, every player, unquestionably says that if it's not the Bell Center, that's their favorite place to play. It's Madison Square Garden. And so,
God.
Well, you could. I know you're saying that because you see Laz's face.
God, you just lit up his soul.
Well, I've never been to the Bell Center, and I've been trying to go, so I gotta get there.
I mean, obviously, Madison Square Garden is a pretty special place to be.
Yeah,
meanwhile, I was talking to Mike Matheson as to whether or not it was one of his favorite places to be, and he said it was until we had that series with Pittsburgh and New York, and went 7 games, and it was the whole thing turned after Sid got hurt, and it was anyways. All to say, as popular as Madison Square Garden is among the players, the Bell Center still takes the cake, and we just get treated to so many of those moments.
Yeah.
No matter where the team is in the standings, there's just always a lot of them.
Well, the pitch on the seats make it such a unique place to play because you feel like everybody's on top of you. Like you catch a puck at the point, you get a puck at the corner of the point. Let's say a forward goes low to high, and I actually can visually remember this. You feel like you don't have any time or space because you got guys coming at you on the ice, and the pitch is so high and steep that they're leaning over you, and it just feels like, you start gripping your stick a little bit tight the first time you're ever in a building there. And in that game, Johnny, it really, you got to get to a game there at some point. You got to find your way into a broadcast or other to get up there.
Wait a year. It might be a playoff year. Wait a year. It might be a playoff game. Then you'll really experience something special.
Perfect transition, Johnny. Right? I mean,
because I was going to ask Eric. I mean, you said your story last night is what this win and what Laine's goal means for the Canadiens. And right now, you look at the Eastern Conference. While the Canadiens are in last, they're at the bottom of the conference. They're 6 points back of the second wildcard spot. I mean, what we're seeing in the East right now is ridiculous. Is it crazy to say that Montreal could do something and maybe get themselves back right within it?
I wouldn't put my money on it, but I would suggest that they have a better chance if they remain healthy with their current composition, that they could achieve what was the goal of their season to begin with, which is to be in the mix. To sit here and say that Laine's return helps them potentially miraculously turn around their season, as I wrote last night, is not realistic. But the idea that he could help them be the team that they thought they'd be when he was healthy and they were at their golf tournament talking about in the mix is tangible. And I think, I always looked at Laine's inclusion through two kind of lenses. One is that he brought some immediate talent to a top 6 that desperately needed it, right? You had the top line with Slafkovsky, Caufield, and Suzuki, and everybody knew that, okay, they're good, but they have no support underneath them. Doc is coming off a year where he hasn't played, and not just a year where he hasn't played. He had an ACL and MCL tear in one knee. Nobody expected he's going to come back and be gangbusters. I think everybody expected he'd be better than he's been so far, and he's starting to pick up his game, and it's coming and coinciding at a time where Laine is coming back. Alex Newhook proved to be a middle 6 forward last year. He ended the year well, but wasn't established top 6 talent. So that was going to be pivotal to get that type of piece in for the guys to feel like, you know what? They've been selling the last couple deadlines. We're in a rebuild, and now they make an addition just to reward our effort, despite the fact that we knew we were going to lose all these games. We were in them. The Canadiens were in the most one-goal games in the league last season. So they had every reason to think they'd take a bit of a step forward here. They weren't so deluded to think that they were a lock for the playoffs or anything like that. In fact, I don't even think at the deepest roots of management they thought they'd make them this year, but they thought they'd give themselves a much better chance, at least with Laine in the fold. And that second lens that I look at it through is what it did for pushing certain guys who had been playing above their heads in the top 6 down the lineup and into better matchups. And okay, you can look at Josh Anderson and Brendan Gallagher and Christian Dvorak and Yoel Armia and say, okay, the Habs are paying too much money for these guys to be bottom 6 forwards, but they can afford it, so it doesn't matter. And when I talk about those 4 guys particularly, and you add in Emil Heineman and Jake Evans, who have both been fantastic, they have been excellent from the beginning to the end, but now they've been excellent throughout this entire season, despite where the Canadiens are at in the standings. Now that Laine is there and they have an actual top 6 that other teams have to focus on, it opens those guys up even more. And I looked at those 2 lines last night, the Dvorak Gallagher Anderson line completely dominated the game. They controlled 80% of the shot attempts and the expected goals. And Evans, Heineman, and Armia were at 71 and 75%. So some goals start coming from there, and you get that depth of scoring. You become a more dangerous team.
And it's a perfect segue because we have a loyal listener who writes in our chat all the time, Jim the Swede, and he wants to ask you a specific question about Emil Heineman, excuse me. Are you surprised, as me, I think he meant to say, that Emil Heineman made the team out of camp? And what's your assessment of him? As a Swede, I'm surprised he's been a full-time member of the Habs all season so far. But you actually, I remember you said in warm-up to me at MSG, you were like, watch this kid Heineman, 51. He's sick. So you've been on him, from the start, it feels like.
Yeah, I was on him right when training camp basically started. The first couple of days, you could see a major difference. He played 5 or 6 games last season. And, he even actually, I'm going to say this. When training camp opened last year, Emil Heineman started off camp next to Caufield and Suzuki. This is a guy that was traded for when Tyler Toffoli was moved out. Basically, Kent Hughes' first move as general manager moves Tyler Toffoli to Calgary. They pick up a pick and Emil Heineman, who they say their scouts are really high on. He plays a heavy style, North American style game, and they all liked him. So he starts last training camp next to Caufield and Suzuki, and you can see the skating, you can see the shot, you could see the big body, you could see the potential, but he was thinking a lot.
In Boston, that goal in Boston.
No, he can really shoot. I mean, he can really shoot. His shot is fantastic. He's also, I saw some. I know that Jay Fresh does all those kind of analytics,
cards or whatever.
Yeah, he does those cards, but he also posts the speed bursts and stuff like that through Edge Data.
I saw the speed burst thing the other day because our guy Pat Maroon was all over those charts.
So Heineman was 4th or 5th with the most speed bursts and one of the fastest players in the league. So he can really skate, but he couldn't put it together last year, right? He needed to experience North American hockey. The year before, he had some concussion issues. He had some injuries. He's coming in automatically put with those guys. The message is clear. We see you as a guy who could really make this team. And he kind of faltered. And then when he came up, he was a little bit timid, a little bit too much inside his own head, which is only normal for a guy who's coming from Sweden playing North American hockey for his first time. This year, he came to camp from day one. It appeared to me he was going to make the team. You just saw the change from thinking too much to everything becoming instinct. And when you put that package together of all those assets that I just mentioned, you come up with a player that looks like what he's looked like so far. And you know what? He's doing it with an average of 11, 12 minutes a game. I know Canadiens fans are clamoring to see him move up the lineup, but that could be a gradual, slow burn. Because let him just keep building up his confidence and playing the way he's playing, and he will continue to prove that he's going to be a very valuable NHL player as we go along.
Well,
I don't think he'll be on Team Sweden, though.
Well, and look, there's another potential snub coming out of Montreal, but that's not where I'm going next. Because
I thought you were going to go there.
Our chat
you're definitely asking about Lane Hutson, are you not?
Our chat is way too sober today. All right. And they have a drinking game where anytime I bring up anything about BU, the shots start, the chat starts drinking. We like to get our audience nice and liquored up early in the morning. So we can't have you on without me asking about Lane Hutson because, admittedly, Eric, I haven't watched a lot of Montreal Canadiens hockey this year, wire to wire. I pick up a period here. I pick up a period there. I've seen the highlights, obviously. I've seen the discourse. I watched this kid play whatever he played in 60, 70 games in college and the World Juniors and all this. I watched a little bit of the game last night. I see the way he moves the puck. His puck moving ability, he can do it while he's sleeping. But you're in the press box every night, right? So I want to hear it from you. What did you expect from him versus what you've seen? Do you see progression in his game away from the puck? Where do you sit with Lane Hutson right now?
Oh man, I'm going to try and keep this short, which is not my specialty. But honestly, I said he would start in the NHL as a star before camp started, and that he would develop into a superstar. And nothing I've seen so far has dissuaded me from believing that. The kid is special, and I'm not just talking about the bullshit he does at the top of the blue line and what he can do in the offensive zone, which is
the ice in his veins. It's
very unique skill. It is the competitiveness, the competitiveness, the will to be the difference on every single shift, the desire at both ends of the ice to make a difference in all the small departments. I was talking to Marty the other day. Something that I picked up on certainly recently is Laine is, I guess he's second in rookie scoring.
Yeah.
He played, go back a week, his games against Vegas and Utah were his two roughest games of the season. He was exposed against Vegas, which is an enormous team. And he just, it seemed as though some of the confidence that got rattled just a little bit it got a little more rattled against Utah. And then he stepped onto the ice in Columbus the next night and played one of his best games in the NHL. And then he carried that into New York and played a fantastic game there. And even in Boston, where his partner, who was Mike Matheson, had a brutal game, he was good. So I said to Marty St. Louis, I said, what do you think of Laine's ability to self-correct? And he said, well, you can't self-correct if you can't properly self-assess. And Laine does a really good job of being honest with himself when, he doesn't have his best stuff and what he needs to correct to get there. The kid is an extremely quick learner. He's a sponge.
Mm-hmm.
He's got that desire.
Oh, yeah.
I was talking to him, the last thing I'll share is I was talking to him at some point or another, about the fact that he's 20 years old. And I was like, you have a fake ID to go through the States with and this and that. He's like, no, I don't.
He doesn't do that. Yeah, he doesn't.
And I was like, come on, you won't have a cocktail here and there. You're going to go to Vegas. You're not going to have a drink or whatever it is. He says, no, he goes, you look at the superstars in this league, they're completely dialed in. And I love that just because it is a reflection of how he sees himself. That he knows he has that potential and he will not let anything get in the way of him realizing it. And, I sat here a few minutes ago and said I wouldn't bet on the Canadiens dramatically turning around their season. I would bet a lot on Laine Hutson becoming a superstar because he's already a star in this league.
Yeah. Well, I having got to know him, having got to know his dad, his brothers over the last couple of years, I can tell you this.
He said you guys are best friends, by the way.
Yeah, that's a strong. It's funny. I developed a really good relationship with his dad, just kind of getting to talk to him over the last couple of years because he's brought along 3 really good hockey players and he has a 4th coming that's supposed to be pretty good too. So whatever they're feeding those kids when they're little is obviously working. But I would run into them. I would go do a broadcast, right? And, after the game, whatever, maybe I go meet Laine's dad for a beer. And then the next morning at 6 a.m., they'd be opening up a rink so the younger brother could skate. And who would be taking him out on the ice? Laine, right? Laine is a rink rat. He wants to be on the ice. He's got a little of that Yager situation where the game ends and he waits for everybody to leave. And then he goes back out on the ice if there was something that wasn't working. His focus is hockey. It wasn't going to the bar. It wasn't going to the bars. It wasn't partying in college. It wasn't doing any of that stuff. He has the
tunnel vision.
The tunnel vision to be a
superstar the right way?
player. He does. He's got that tunnel vision.
It's definitely a singular focus, and it's so impressive. He's a great kid. His character is absolutely there.
Kid.
I said this about Nick Suzuki when he came into Montreal. Here's humble Canadiana Nick Suzuki. He is literally, if you put the Canadian flag on his T-shirt, he would be an advertisement for what this country is all about. He, doesn't speak glowingly about himself or anything like that. He doesn't like to speak about himself. But what was very clear to me about Nick Suzuki from the day he walked into the Canadiens room after the trade with Max Pacioretty was that he knew how good he was. And I see the same thing with Laine. He's super humble. He's super gosh, but he knows exactly how good he is and what his potential is. And I think you need to have that. There's, we all have egos. Ego drives a lot, and it drives certainly the best performers in every walk of life and industry. I'm not saying his is so blown up that he will big time people or anything like that. It's the absolute opposite in the way he presents himself, but internally what he believes about himself is what everybody should believe about him because he's that driven.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, before we let you go, I'm going to ask you for 10 seconds, okay, on your feelings about Cole Caufield potentially and reportedly not making Team USA. So let's see if we can do this. 10 seconds.
Yeah, listen, one of the most complete rosters out there. They got to build a team. Cole understands that. I think he gave himself a pretty good chance. You know, you look at his start to the season, it was really, really strong. I'm past 10 seconds now. But he was scoring a lot of goals, but he wasn't playing as well as he has over the last 3 weeks, which he's been really great away from the puck. I will say this: he's probably not making Team USA this time around because they're going with the veteran look and this and that. He will make Team USA for the Olympics. I believe that.
I would have to think so.
Yeah,
I'm with you on that. But look, we really appreciate you coming on today. You know, you've got the big name, the big following in Montreal. And you speak English, so you know you're an easy guy to follow. You know, for us,
I speak French too.
Kobe, I have to mention this before Eric goes. Eric was also a locker room guest. That's how I know him. That's how I met him.
Oh,
there's a full circle here.
Well, I did know that about him.
Yeah.
Yes, so he is a member of the tribe. So we all do roll with the same tribe on that. So Eric, we appreciate your time today. It's always good to go north of the border, and admittedly, like, we got to talk about Montreal more, but they got to give us things to talk about. I mean, like, we can't just pull it out of thin air, right? So
I need.
You think it's hard for you? You think it's hard for you? Imagine what it's like for me every day.
Yeah. Well, I've been a part of rebuilds. So 3 years in Philly and 2 years in Chicago. So I've seen it as a broadcaster firsthand. So thanks for your time today, Eric. We'll check in with you soon. All right.
Pleasure. Take care, guys.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Saravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.